Welcome to a new Daily Top Askreddit video. Today's topic:
Reddit doctors and nurses, what's the most impressive case of Google self-diagnosis that turned out to be true? When I was in high school, one of the science classes had to do a project on systemic diseases. This kid chose diabetes. They noticed the symptoms matched what they had been feeling lately, went to the hospital, and it turned out they were days to hours from a diabetic coma. I think it's a miracle it went undetected for so long, but then again, I don't know much about diabetes. They are now a medical professional, so this story really came full circle. Strangely, this also happened to a former BF of one of my friends. He was working on a diabetes project at school and discovered that he had every symptom of type 1 and it was really serious. He'd never even thought of diabetes before starting the project. The illness just randomly appeared while he was working on it. Type 1 is really sneaky like that. When N.M. Martin wrote a character with diabetes into the Babysitter's Club books, many people of different ages who read the books realized they had the symptoms and went to the doctor and ended up being diagnosed. It wasn't talked about much in those days, so I think there needs to be more characters with common health conditions in mainstream media. Then people might actually be diagnosed when they recognize those symptoms in themselves. Who knows how many lives N.M. Martin saved when she created Stacey McGill. That happened to a friend of mine. Her dad was actually a doctor, so he decided to make a little fun project to prove she didn't have diabetes. He brought home these dipsticks that activate in the presence of sugar. Then they got apple juice, Pepsi, and her urine. He dipped a strip in apple juice. It reacted. He dipped a strip in Pepsi. It reacted. Then he said, "But see, your urine doesn't react." As he dipped the strip in her urine. But it did. She was super excited that she beat him until she learned what a pitta diabetes is. My aunt was for some reason one day watching Arthur as an adult. It was an episode wherein Buster was diagnosed with asthma. She listened to the description they gave in the episode and thought it sounded familiar. Turns out she'd had minor asthma all her life and had no idea until she was watching a cartoon on PBS. Weirdest I've heard of was Philip K. Dick believing in a dream he had that his perfectly healthy presenting baby son had a fatal inguinal hernia. Despite doctors' resistance, detailed exam of son found and successfully treated it. Apparently made PK Dick really question reality. Certainly inspired fantastic stories he wrote and are still being made into movies. My uncle was 100% convinced his baby daughter had pneumonia. She wasn't coughing and had a wheeze that was so faint the doctor didn't hear it and actually called in his nurse to listen. And thank heaven he did. I've met doctors that would have just gone with their own judgment, especially when little cousin wasn't showing any symptoms other than her lips being dark. She said she heard something but wasn't sure. X-ray showed she had a lot of pneumonia, on both sides. Her blood oxygen was scary low, but no one checked that until after the X-ray for reasons. She's a healthy teenager now. On a far less serious note, I can tell as soon as my kids come down with strep. No fever, no sore throat, but there is an odor. A couple days later the fever hits. We are able to treat quickly though. Also not a medical professional, but I diagnosed myself and my doctor was pretty flummoxed. For years I had horrible periods, and had that whole, could be endo, could be fibroids runaround. But I also couldn't use tampons, I would somehow just bleed past them, which made less than no sense, and my period cycle was so off sometimes I swore it was like I had 2 uteruses. Then one day I was listening to a podcast and a woman started talking about her experience of living with 2 uteruses. And I was like, damn, that's me. Told the GP, she reluctantly sent me for the scans, told me it almost certainly wasn't that given the rarity. But yep, turns out I have 2 uteruses, cervixes and vaginas, and 1 unit of a kidney instead of the factory issue 2. Also my mum thought I was mad and jokingly bet me a car I didn't have 2 uteruses. Still chasing her up on that. Edit, don't know how to feel about my most popular comment being about my coochies. Mom needs to pay up. Reddit has spoken. 2 cars. 1 for each coochie. If God gave you a 2-car garage, you should have 2 cars. This was my mom. Back when my mom was pregnant with me, mind you, she was 5 feet tall and 100 pounds soaking wet. My dad, Navy, left to go out to do maneuvers, I think it's called. It's when the ship is not docked but not deployed, so it can be fairly close to base. Anyway, they figured all was well because I wasn't due for 3 more months. Wrong. My dad left and the next day my mom went into labor with me being born 12 weeks and 2 days early. This was in 1969 and I weighed 2 pounds 11 ounces. My dad was sent a Western Union telegram saying my mom was stable and doing well and I was listed as, I saw the telegram but can't remember what the words were, let's just say they weren't optimistic I would make it. He gets back to shore and when he walks in to see my mom she's just sitting in the bed looking shell-shocked. She starts crying, they said I'm pregnant again. Turns out she had double uteruses, 3 fallopian tubes and 4 ovaries but 1 cervix. So she was pregnant with me on one side, but the other side was ovulating, and she got pregnant with my younger brother on the other side. And she had my older brother who was almost 2 at the time. So me and my younger brother are 8 months apart. The doctors had to figure out how she was pregnant after giving birth, so they dug deeper, and there you have it. My older brother's pregnancy was normal, no complications, so up until me she was unaware of her condition. Whoa, amazing to have a brother 8 months apart. And, OMG, your poor mom not getting a break between babies, pregnancies. Not impressive really, but I knew I had a blood clot in my leg, thank you Google, but also the signs were classic: area felt warm, calf was swollen, it was painful. I saw several GPs over the course of 2 weeks. I finally had a breakdown crying because I was terrified I was going to have a pee while alone with my nonverbal son because my husband was overseas and I fucking knew it was a blood clot. The tears finally made them refer me to a blood clot clinic that thankfully was happening the following day in the city nearby. After they found the clot, the nurse at the clinic told me my referral letter said I was being sent to put the patient's mind at ease. Unamused, clot was really big by then, of course. Fast forward, turns out I have a rare genetic blood clotting condition, hence the unprovoked clot. Least cool X-Men power ever. I just argued and refused to leave the doctor's rooms. I'm not a crier. I am, however, a 60+ F. He, not my regular doctor, kept saying, it's dehydration, take some electrolytes, and I kept saying, no, I've been assuming it's dehydration for almost a week now, and home treating, and it's getting worse not better. Eventually, he backed down and gave me an order for a blood test. Probably just to get rid of me. Did the test, waited 2 days for results. My regular doctor phoned late in the afternoon to say, pack a bag, and get to the hospital, you have complete kidney failure. Couple of hours in an ambulance, plus a further 4 days in the city hospital, and they finally found the diagnosis, a 1 in a million autoimmune condition. One tip I've heard is to tell the doctor, I want it recorded in my medical file that I requested testing and you refused. They'll usually change their tune when there's a written record of legal liability. This is my exact blood clot story. I googled the symptoms while I was leaving work and went straight to the hospital. The ultrasound tech said, I can't tell you what the results are, but I'm really glad you came here today. Got to spend 4 days in the ICU. I also possibly have the same rare genetic condition. Hooray us. Nurse practitioner. My first primary care job was seeing adults in an affluent part of a big US city with a lot of well-educated, well-connected people who were generally extremely healthy. Some certainly had the money to be described as eccentric instead of a more pejorative term like crazy, so I was used to a lot of pre-visit Googling in the worried well. Coming from a background in emergency medicine, I did a lot of reassuring that no, they were not in fact actively dying. One regular who pushed the eccentricity scale to the limit came in for a sick visit saying he'd been fatigued and having intermittent low-grade headaches. These are extremely non-specific symptoms with an endless differential list, so I tried to get more information as I conducted an exam and reviewed his recent notes. Everything looked fine and he'd had a physical with blood work not long ago, so I suggested he probably had a virus and we should do some watchful waiting with symptomatic care, rest, hydration, NSAIDs, Tylenol, etc. I always end with summarizing the symptoms reported and what the plan will be. He goes, oh, did I mention the dead birds? No, thinking this visit was about to take a turn as I was heading out the door. Yeah, there's been a lot of dead birds in my yard, so I think I have West Nile virus. Turns out he did. I had always heard about the more severe presentations of West Nile virus such as encephalitis, but it can be very mild or asymptomatic. I jokingly refer to that case as the positive dead bird sign. Still just supportive care and watching out for any warning signs. ETA, wow, didn't think this would blow up. To give more context on what led to actually testing him for WNV, because I don't just randomly go testing people for everything under the sun when they suggest it. Unnecessary testing leads to false positives, inconclusive or incidental findings that lead to more diagnostics that can have adverse effects like extra exposure to radiation through CTs or risks associated with biopsies. The patient had pictures of the dead birds on his phone, lots of them. So either this guy is a bird serial killer, has a deceased bird obsession, or there is actually something up, so I looked into it. WNV is spread through a transmission cycle of birds to mosquitoes then back to birds. It doesn't kill all infected birds, but it definitely can kill some US birds. I looked up local disease incidence rates published by the Health Department, CDC, and saw there actually was a fairly sizable increase in local cases. When you said dead birds, I thought there was going to be something psych, but West Nile is even crazier. I thought a gas leak or carbon monoxide poisoning. After an egg retrieval, I got myself to the ER and told them I definitely had a severe case of ovarian hyperstimulation syndrome. I thought it was a no-brainer. Boston IVF had warned me of what to look for, and I had nearly every symptom, including the go immediately to the ones. The doc kind of laughs and goes, maybe we should avoid Googling symptoms. He recommended Tylenol and was going to discharge me. It took me forever to convince them to just do imaging and check my ovaries. First time I've ever heard a doctor say, holy shit, that can't be right. My ovaries were each larger than a grapefruit. They called the on-call OBGYN, who admitted me immediately. Per my OB, I'm the only person my tiny hospital has ever had to admit for severe OHSS. You weren't even Googling symptoms, another doctor had told you what to look out for. I'm glad you were able to convince them to check for it, and fuck that doc. To all doctors, please don't laugh at the patients. Ugh, I'm sorry you went through that. I had that and was so bloated with fluid that I looked 6 months pregnant. It was so painful. I'm just glad it didn't last long. I'm sorry you dealt with it too. I wasn't expecting that to be the worst part of IVF. I thought for sure it'd be the injections, but nope.